hi Leigh.
Hello. How are we?
Oh, I'm good. Yeah, I'm full of the spirit of America.
Yes, I'm full of beans myself, by which I mean I got in from a gig in Birmingham at 2 a.m. last night.
That's really brutal. I mean, I got back from work at midnight, but then I stayed up till 2 scrolling on Instagram.
Oh, you love a doom scroll.
So we excited to dive into episode 2 of The West Wing.
I'm so excited. There's so much going on.
I know. I feel like we scratched the surface in episode 1.
We but scratched the surface, whereas in this episode I was like, oh my God, am I in?
So I was wondering, Leigh, before we started, what is going to be our topic of interest today? What are you going to be teaching us about?
I think that we should pay special attention to Vice President, the pettiest of the petty whiny bitches, John Hoynes. Because we're going to do a little deep dive into the stupid question that is, what does the Vice President even do?
Yeah, I really appreciate this because it is one of those things that I'm like, it feels like a very important job, but I could not tell you what is in that job description.
Yeah. It turns out many legal scholars are in the same place that you are, Fi.
So let's bloody dive in then. So episode 2, this episode is titled Post Hoc, Ergo Propter Hoc, which I think is just Aaron Sorkin being like, I know more than you and I need you to know that.
Episode titles that a female screenwriter could never get away with.
Just Latin.
Just full Latin.
But I'm here for it. To be honest, we do open the episode with just Mandy back in her silver BMW.
Back just driving in an unacceptable fashion.
Yeah. In your own words, she's just back on her shit from moment 1. And I think it's really iconic to drive your car full speed into a pedestrianized area in order to shout at your boyfriend.
In Washington, D.C., like the most surveillance heavy city potentially in the world.
Yeah, and she has a very important job. Like, people should be able to feel their feelings. You know, if someone has upset you, you should be able to talk to them about it. But I don't know if this is the space or the time for her to be doing that with a US senator. So Mandy is shouting at Lloyd Russell.
Yes.
Because he has responded to something which basically means that he isn't really interested in running for president.
Yes.
And she was kind of into it because he was going to be running for president.
So she was like part of a 2-woman team that was his exploratory committee to think about making a primary challenge to President Bartlett. And now he's decided that he's going to go with the president on some legislation he wants to get through. So he's not making a stand against Bartlett. Hence, he's not kind of pushing himself to the fore because he's decided that he can't beat Bartlett, which is entirely correct.
I mean, it's true, but also it's like beta energy and that's just not attractive. We need an alpha. And I think Mandy needs an alpha, hence why she has so much chemistry with Josh. However, I will say that one of Lloyd Russell's little aides comes over, and when Mandy is screaming in his face and is like, Senator, we have a caucus. And I do think that that's potentially the US government French exit strategy.
Yeah.
Which is just you're in an uncomfortable situation. So I'm just going to touch my arm to your sleeve and just tell you have a caucus.
Yeah.
And that's you being like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I have a caucus. So
it's the equivalent of you calling me with an emergency when I'm on a bad hinge date.
Me being like, oh no, my apartment is flooded. You must bring wine and leave this terrible date immediately. Yeah, so it seems like from the off, Mandy and Lloyd, I mean, there's no clear breakup moment, but I feel like the whole thing is off. The job is off and also the romance is off.
Correct. Also, the fact that he didn't give her a heads up ahead of time is so disrespectful and absolute grounds for a breakup.
Yeah, I think so. It's a real deal breaker for me.
He's professionally screwed her.
Yeah. And he would know if he's both employing her and dating her, he would know what she has put on the line to set up this business. So it's just very shitty from him. Really, really shitty. I love that we immediately go from Mandy in the pits of despair straight to Josh having the greatest day of his life.
Yes.
I'm not quite sure why, but I'm loving it.
So Josh was the one who like lobbied and like orchestrated the fact that Lloyd Russell didn't take the stand against Bartlett. So Josh is like, whoop, whoop, I've screwed my ex-girlfriend.
Metaphorically, but I want to do it really.
Metaphorically, yes. Yeah. Bring me all the bagels and muffins in the land. Let's go.
I adore that. And I also adore how much the wonderful Donatella is just like so done with his energy already.
She's not even gotten to her desk yet for the day.
She's like hanging up her coat, and we put this in our little shared document. Her quote was, "It's going to be an unbearable day." And I actually read online that the actress who plays Donna originally auditioned for CJ.
Oh, interesting.
But wasn't successful, so they put her into Donna's character. And then initially, Donna was only going to be recurring for like 2 or 3 episodes.
I did know that, yes. And she just like absolutely smashed it out of the park.
Yeah, and everyone was like, their on-screen chemistry is off the charts. Like, she needs to be like a season.
She needs to be queen of the EAs.
Exactly. Speaking of EAs, we spend a little bit more time with the president's executive assistant, Mrs. Landingham, who just is an icon and a legend.
I can't stop thinking about her backstory. I'm obsessed. Like, I just feel like sometime in the 60s, she was like, I'm going to be a career girl. I'm not going to get married. And then she like absolutely smashed a typing course. And everyone was like, oh my God, you're incredible. And then I feel like she got married slightly later in life.
Yeah.
And she just like casually went up to her boss one day and was like, excuse me, can I have the day off to get married?
Yeah, and her boss was like, absolutely. And I will hire a car to drive you because of everything I owe you. Like, you would never forget to buy her flowers for her birthday.
No.
Bartlett is definitely sending her flowers, sending her cards, like remembering stuff like her own wedding anniversary and being like, congratulations to you and the old man. But I also love that she has a jar of cookies on her desk, and you just don't see that anymore. Also, we get a first look at the full titles in this episode.
It's so iconic.
It's the like photos overlaid with the American flag with just, I mean, we've already talked about the score in detail in the first episode, but it is a stunning theme tune.
It does make me feel a little bit, though, the way that they're all kind of like overlaid over the American flag, it does make me feel like they're all going to die.
It's very in memoriam, isn't it? I was thinking that, but I was like, should I say it or should I not? And I'm really glad that you said it, because it feels quite like Band of Brothers. So I initially thought that this was going to be our B plot, but I think I circled back to it later and I was like, this is definitely the A plot. So the president is really bad at jokes.
Yes.
And he is told a bad joke about golf, and therefore a group of golfers are refusing to visit the White House. And that is the main story arc for this episode.
Again, Joe Biden is there somewhere being like, I feel you, man. It's hard out there.
Presidents love golf. Like, famously, well, you know, George Bush Jr. and Donald Trump, both very big into the golfing. I mean, lest we forget the iconically awful moment of George Bush just giving a press conference and then saying, now, watch this drive, and just continuing to play golf.
Oh my God, I forgot about that one. What a one from the archive.
I honestly think about it like maybe 2 or 3 times a week. I just can't believe that it ever happened.
There are many things about George W. Bush that I can't believe ever happened, but that's a story for another day.
We do get a new character in this episode, and that is Morris. And Morris is a military doctor, and I believe that he's in the Navy.
Yes.
And he's a very handsome man. I would put him in his early 30s. He's recently a new father, like arrives with a picture of his wife and baby. A fact which Leo uses to literally distract his executive assistant because she is bothering him.
Margaret,
Yeah,
yes.
he just gives Margaret a picture of a baby and she's just like, oh.
Literally like throwing a biscuit at a crying child. The disrespect to executive assistants everywhere.
I mean, I'm not going to, like, babies are cute. If someone's like, this is my new baby, I'm going to look at that and be like, oh, that's lovely. I'm not going to actively, like, stop walking and, like, take a full moment and get lost in the photo of a child that's in no way related to me.
But women, Fiona, we love babies.
Procreation is the main thing in our mind. We're just...
Procreation is gripping the nation.
But I do have a good feeling about Morris. I feel like he's going to be like the kind of hard talking friend of the president. That's sort of what I felt from that first interaction. And he seems like very, like, people are putting trust in him. Like, he, like, is chatting to Leo and Mrs. Landingham like an old friend.
Yes, but he's also there being like, I'm comparatively low ranked for this role, guys.
Which again feels like maybe I initially thought that meant that we would see him progress. Like, as the series went on, like, we would see him being promoted. But we'll get to that as we go forward. The other new character that we meet is the lovely Daisy. And Daisy works with Mandy at her, like, consultancy firm.
AKA she's like the number one woman having to put up with Mandy's shit.
Yeah, and therefore she's my new fave gal.
Yeah.
Also because she arrives just wearing, like, these absolutely incredible, like, chocolate wide leg pants and just, like, a pale pink linen shirt. So we love Daisy. She understandably is absolutely pissed that Mandy has ballsed it up with Lloyd Russell because they've literally moved to DC and opened a business.
Yes. Based off of that professional relationship.
The scene I would like to see is Mandy admitting to Daisy for the first time that she started sleeping with Lloyd Russell.
Yeah, when you're like, gal, like, I literally quit my job so that we could start a consultancy business and you are sleeping with our one client?
Yeah.
That's crazy behaviour for someone with a doctorate.
Exactly. For someone who's so smart and, you know, what people keep on saying is she's very seasoned pro. There were so many people that Mandy could sleep with and yet she chose their one client. It's a red flag for me.
Don't shit where you eat. And she did it before with Josh on the campaign trail.
Oh.
Just get a boyfriend in literally any other industry. I suppose it is hard though in Washington DC. Like, realistically, what other industry are people going to be in? Yeah,
and I suppose the working hours of being in politics are it's not like you're going to be like, oh, let's plan a lovely Sunday date. That's just not happening.
No.
But equally, I do need her to not shag everyone she's working with. Like, get your kicks elsewhere.
Shag as much as she wants. Just like,
oh yeah,
just like not people she needs to work with.
Do you know what? I would actually be incredibly interested as to, like, what the Tinder Hinge scene is like in DC.
Terrifying. Terrifying.
Like, how many times are you going to have one night stand and then, like, end up going to a press conference and being like, I'm in a room with at least 6 people I've shagged?
I feel like that must happen a lot.
I mean, it's bad enough. You're like, well, it looks like I'm working with these 3 lesbians, 2 of which I've already dated.
Don't personally attack me on this podcast, Fiona.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I take it all back. Speaking of being a petty little bitch, I feel like it's time for us to discuss the vice president who comes into his own in this episode in a big time. So the vice is called Hoynes.
Which just immediately by the character name, you know he's going to be a petty bitch.
And honestly, I just think that he's just a complete shitbag.
Yes.
So CJ runs an absolutely iconic press conference as per usual, and it comes about that the vice president has kind of made like a shady comment about Bartlett, kind of like nudging towards like he's a bit old and sad and like he kind of needs everyone to be on his side because he's losing support.
It's not quite the full-throated support that one might expect from their second in command.
Like, literally, like your one job is to consistently support the president.
Correct.
Anyway, CJ deflects it like an absolute pro, and we then like see her tracking down Hoynes. And I'm assuming from last week's kind of study session that he has his own team that's like exactly the same as Bartlett's team. So he has like a chief of staff.
Correct. Although that was only established in 1939.
That's relatively recently, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we get this kind of moment between Alison Janney and I'm not sure if it's like her equivalent on Hoynes' team or like Leo's equivalent on Hoynes' team. But his name is Stevie and he's fucking rude.
He's so rude.
Honestly, like no one snubs Alison Janney. How dare he?
How dare he?
Like he literally is like, he's very busy. I don't know if he's got a minute to talk to you. There's a nicer way to say that.
Yeah.
Like we don't have to be friends, but we can be cordial, you know? And so I really hate that from him. I'm like, Hoynes is doing some sort of weird PR stunt with like a French diplomat. This is not like game-changing politics happening. Like he's got 5 minutes to talk to an employee of his boss about why he's being such a shitbag.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't help that I am deeply in love with CJ as a character, that if anything bad happens to her or anyone wrongs her, I'm going to take it incredibly personally.
Absolutely. Because she is just representing it for like the career gals who are like incredibly capable, but also funny. Just absolutely repping it. The kind of outraged like scream and wiggle that she does walking down a corridor. I'm like, I want to be capable enough and respected enough that I can do that in my workplace. And people are like, God, she's so passionate about the job, you know?
Yeah, like no one's making jokes about CJ. She's running the jokes.
Correct.
I do feel like this is the episode also of bromances. I think we really I know, it is a beautiful sigh moment because I feel like we really see Sam and Josh really settling into like this sort of dysfunctional pals relationship. So Sam comes into Josh's office and this is when Sam announces to Josh that he slept with a sex worker and kind of really likes her. And Josh is just immediately done.
So done. You just know that there's been so many times that Sam has come into his office and been like, so there's this girl. And it's just always a disaster.
And I think that that's like a kind of classic energy between best pals though.
I think we also didn't mention in the last episode, wasn't there like a drama last episode about the fact that Sam had accidentally hit on Leo's wife without realizing that it was Leo's wife?
So is what we're deducing from this that Sam's in fact terrible at romance?
I think so, yeah.
I think, do you know what? That makes him even more likable because he is a very sexy character, but I love a character that's like sexy but also feckless.
So feckless. I think that's the perfect word, yes.
Like because he's a very beautiful man, he's kind of stumbled through life picking up beautiful women, but like kind of unclear as to how he's managed to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much like, you know, you and I both have some very special relationships with some very lovable rogues of boys who might come to us with their romantic issues. And it is exactly like that, just if you were working for the President of the United States and therefore actually their Hinge escapades could potentially have national security impacts.
Yes, and that's why I'm with Josh when his like head is literally in his hands and he's like, I know you really like her, but you work for the president and she is an escort and no shade on her, but that's a tricky situation for us to navigate.
Also, I love Josh just being like, oh God, you're going to try and reform her, aren't you? And then he says the most damning thing that any straight man can say to another straight man, which is, I don't know what kind of quest you're on. And I just think that's the most damning thing that can be said in a bromance.
Yeah. I also, again, I think I'm just going to have to start like a notebook of like Aaron Sorkinisms for me to add into my like everyday chat, because that's a fantastic way to say to your friend, I don't know why you keep making dumb decisions.
Yeah. And like, also, please don't turn your romantic life into like a hero complex.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, please don't spend your life trying to save women. They're fine.
We will ask if we need your help. We are very capable. So the kind of less bromance and more sort of like sweet friendship of this episode is the one between Morris, our military doctor, and Bartlett, our president. It is just like such a beautiful like little scene where Bartlett's just being like a grumpy old man, just being grumpy about the fact that he can't eat steak and have whiskey every day because his heart will explode.
I also feel sad that I can't have whiskey every day. I'm with him.
It's something to mourn. It is. However, there's a lot of talk about his wife and new baby, like a lot of talk about it. And there's an element of worthiness to the dialogue that I'm worrying is foreshadowing something bad.
Especially when that score kicks in. Like the score is kicking in too much for casual chat.
And it's never a good sign for one of the only Black characters in this show to start talking about the history of their family within America.
Yeah, I think the minute that I think at this point 2 named Black characters in a series to suddenly start referencing their family's history with slavery, it doesn't tend to lead anywhere good for that character in terms of staying alive, unfortunately.
No. And then as Morris leaves being like, I'm going away on a work trip for a couple of weeks, there's like a, hey, wait. Oh, my voice cracked then. That was so emotional. There's an incredible quote where he tells Morris to
look at that picture again. The past isn't the only thing your family can be proud of.
And it was that moment that I knew Morris was going to die.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
Because God forbid, one of the 2 named Black characters should be happy and successful.
And a recurring character.
Yeah, like please give him a season arc. Do you know what I mean? Give the man a season arc.
For me, I think it's a missed opportunity because I would care more if I'd had 10 episodes with him. Let's let some roots grow before we cut the tree down.
Agreed.
Anyway, the other fantastic moment of that scene was Bartlett saying to Morris, who's obviously like kind of confidant energy, I'm not comfortable with violence, which does feel like quite a big statement to be coming out of the mouth of a president.
Yes, and it does mean that he is ultimately going to be like at some point pressing the big red button. Like that's the only kind of arc.
Yeah, that he's going to have
that can go on.
Yeah, he's going to have a really big decision to like have like military activity somewhere.
Yeah, if I can just read Bartlett's full quote, because again, I think it's iconic and just like so like Grandad America. I'm an accomplished man, Morris. I can comfortably sit with prime ministers, presidents, and even the Pope. But why is it that when I'm sitting with the Joint Chiefs, I feel like I'm at my father's dinner table?
Unfortunately, all this does is just spur on my love for Martin Sheen. The other kind of burgeoning relationship that we have in this is our friendship / co-workership between Daisy and Mandy. And we have a real like female friends moment where they are in the office, but like the lights have been turned off. There's like one lamp on. They're drinking red wine out of like paper cups and just being like, everything is shit and we're angry at the world. And I just think that encapsulates like these people have been friends for a long time. They've been through some stuff together.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so I think I love Mandy and Daisy, and I don't want to lose Daisy. So we kind of come back to the White House after we've hung out with the gals, and we're in the midst of kind of covering up that the Vice is being a petty bitch. But also news has travelled that Lloyd Russell has basically dropped Mandy and won't be putting himself forward as a primary candidate. So there's a lot of like Leo strategizing of like, we should hire Mandy. And then Josh just being like, please, can you not?
She's my ex-girlfriend.
He is very casual about the fact that he's like interfering with someone else's political career purely based on the fact that he's just going to find it awkward because they used to date.
I also love the turnaround of like, he thinks he's really like got one over on her in the morning. And then it does just end up with her getting hired by his boss.
Exactly. So we also see Sam going into Toby's office now and admitting to Toby that he slept with Laurie. And Toby's response is iconic.
Did you trip over?
I read somewhere online that in the entirety of his like screen time on The West Wing, the actor that plays Toby smiles only 21 times.
I love that for him.
And I love that Toby's reaction is exactly the same as Josh's reaction, just like head in his hands, like, oh my God. And I love that there is no shame put on Laurie. It's all just like, for God's sake, Sam, get it together, brother. Like, this is embarrassing at this point. Like, none of them are like, wow, so low. Like an escort, really? They're just like, Sam, please, please, can you stop doing this? I'd also just like to take a moment of nostalgia in general for printing at this moment. Just a small juncture for printing and putting things in like project files.
When you get it out of the printer and it's like warm.
The smell of the toner. And then you can put them in the little like blue project folders. And just all of the kind of corridor scenes, there's always someone being passed something.
WeTransfer just doesn't have the same ring to it. You know, it's just not quite as like satisfying texture wise.
Or someone being like, can you just airdrop it to my phone so I can read it on the way home? No, I want you to annotate this printed paper copy with a red pen.
Yeah.
The work I've put into it deserves that.
Yeah. I also really enjoyed Sam's EA just approaching him and saying, is it Bonnie, Sam's EA?
It is Bonnie, yeah.
Bonnie. And he's handing her a speech for the president and she's like, done polishing? Done tweaking? And he's like, yeah. And then he like grabs it off her one more time. I felt very seen by that.
Yeah, she knows him well. And it's those touches that make it feel like such a real workplace. I think the kind of like fatigue and like crumpled shirt and like half drunk cup of coffee of it all is why I'm so drawn into the world of it, because it could be so easy for it to be this kind of like quite polished, sexy show a la something like House of Cards. But I like that it's allowing itself, well, Aaron Sorkin's allowing it to be a bit messy.
Yeah, agreed.
And I do think that that's very indicative of that, like that period of quality TV in America, like that kind of like mid 90s to mid noughties, like characters getting to not be perfect, but also not be villains.
Definitely.
Like, am I on board with all of Josh's behavior? No. But do I still love him and root for him? Yes, absolutely.
It's interesting to think that this is on TV at the same time as Sex and the City and how they might like speak to each other. Because obviously we know that like Carrie Bradshaw is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But did she and her pals like open up the world to a new level of sexual liberation for women? Yes. So, you know, swings and roundabouts.
Also, I did find out that Mrs. Landingham's first name is Dolores.
Love.
So from now on, I probably will just refer to her as Dolores, as we are close friends
Correct.
now. So what we're going to get now is Josh having to kind of eat his humble pie and go and see Mandy.
Is he eating his humble pie though?
Or is he eating his hoity-toity pie and lording it about in her face? Josh arrives in his like trench coat and just like leans in the door frame and and says, "Do you want to work for the leader of the free world?" Like, come on, Josh. I would love this to have a paper trail. Like, could we have this offer come through via email or a memo?
Send her a fax. He could have sent her a fax. Do we have email yet at this point? Could he have emailed her?
We would have it's 1999, so yeah.
A memo, you know. He could have
memorandum.
couriered a memo.
No, but it's because he's a petty bitch. He needs to go and be like, I'm the one that's saving your ass, so you owe me.
Like all men, he wants the glory.
But he still loves Mandy.
Yeah, but also if Donna got a boyfriend, he'd be upset about it.
He is exactly that guy. I think he's keeping Donna on the back burner.
Keeping her on the back burner, or he's just like so used to her always being there that he like hasn't considered what her life is outside of being his executive assistant. Yeah. But then were she to be gone, he'd be like, oh no, I was in fact in love.
Yeah, I think she's entirely unaware that she needs him as much as he needs her.
Correct.
Wow, that was really like insightful of me. We also have a little bit more time with Hoynes in this episode. Like Papa Leo comes to like save the day. And I really love this. I fully know that it's because it's Leo's entire job to like support his staff and make sure that like they're able to do their job. But I really enjoy how he comes in with this like quite put upon dad energy of like, you were rude to my kid, so I'm going to dress you down. And all I'm going to say is the scene between him and the vice president where he's defending CJ is classy as fuck.
Yeah, but also did we catch at one point Hoynes, which made me hate him even more, at one point Hoynes, when they're like doing the opening pleasantries of the conversation before like Leo goes in for the kill, he says, Margaret's looking good, referring to Leo's executive assistant.
Oh no.
So I think we can put
that.
Hoynes down as a misogynist.
Because you know that he's like remembered Margaret's name on purpose to mess with Leo, but like there's loads of other people whose names he should know that he's just not bothered to learn.
Correct. I hate him so much. He has such a slappable face as well. Again, no disrespect to the actor.
I do think that you nailed it when you were like, Leo's coming in with quite an intense like Liam Neeson in Taken energy in this scene.
Yes. Yes.
It's the like, I have a very particular set of skills. I will find you and I will kill
Correct.
you. Meanwhile, Sam is still just messing things up with Laurie and making her life so hard.
She was so ready to do the respectful back away. And this silly little bitch is caught feelings, basically.
Yeah. And I kind of love that it's this way round, that like Laurie's just like living her life. And she does say like, I was so ready to just like back away. I was never going to tell anyone what you did. I was like going to keep your secrets. Like I'm a respectful gal and you have just got your face all up in my business. He goes to where she is actively working and then threatens her.
He's like, oh yeah, my good friend, the Attorney General is coming. Let's go have a drink with him. And it's like, please don't threaten the woman.
This is not how you get girls to like you, Sam.
Horrifying.
Exactly. And then he says, which is just as damning, if I cost you some money, I'll write you a check. No, Sam. No, that's not the point. It's about respect. Yeah. It's hard because Rob Lowe has so much game as an actor, like, and like he gets the sort of like the like witty repartee. It's so good. So you're like, yeah, Sam, you know, Sam's like got game, but actually I think deep down the character is very selfish.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can see why Laurie is like kind of charmed by him. So I think you kind of like forgive her for being charmed by him, despite the fact that she was kind of put in like immediate danger by his behavior.
Yeah.
But I love the dialogue that Laurie gets. I think it's like so respectfully written of the character and like the work that she does. And that just feels like really far-sighted for 1999.
It does, doesn't it? Because she says like, I don't need saving, Sam. And she also says, are you aware that I make more money than you do? And then she has this like important sentence, I think, when like regarding sex work, where she says, and you understand that I wasn't abused as a child and that I like doing what I do.
Yeah.
And that it's putting me through law school. And then she says to him, you humiliated me and scared me. And I think it's like, actually, I think it's very powerful to put those words into the mouth of a female character that's doing sex work. Because it's like, respect my boundaries like I'm respecting your boundaries. Like, I'm not here to play a fallen woman like caricature.
Yeah. Which I was worried in episode 1 was kind of where we were headed. But I
Yeah.
think she's afforded so much dignity, and I love that, and I love that he's the idiot.
We then have a change of tone that like comes in like
a sledgehammer. Like it's like the score hits, and it's just like 3:35 a.m.
and we just see Bartlett like walking around outside.
POTUS is in his hoodie, so you know shit has gone down.
Like he's been like woken up. He's got out of his gym jams into his leisure wear. We were right to worry about Morris because he is dead.
Such huge character potential, and just cut down after a single episode.
So I'm really upset that we don't see more from him. But what we do get is that like he has died in an act of terrorism. Yeah, it feels like if Morris had to go, it's a worthy kind of, I think, season-long arc.
Yeah.
For him to be kind of the catalyst for. Because not only do we have the president having to respond as a man who's previously said that he's non-violent, respond to an act of violence, but there's also like a personal loss wrapped up in it. Which is why when Mrs. Landingham's like, we've got these international delegations on the phone, he's like, they can wait.
I'm going to call his wife first.
Yeah, which again is just really classy. We then have a conversation between Leo and Bartlett, which is one of the most like American propaganda moments I have ever seen. Could you provide us with a dramatic reading?
Leo, I'm not frightened. I'm going to blow them off the face of the earth with the fury of God's own thunder.
I mean, God will make sure that the bad guys pay.
Yeah.
America.
Yeah.
No more jokes about funny hats and golf for the president, I think.
Break time's over.
And that has quite a strong link to the golf point earlier, which is, so this episode came out in September 1999. So we are pre the War on Terror, technically. Now, George Bush Jr. and the famous "now watch this drive" moment happened after this episode came out. So he could have learned how to appropriately respond
to golf,
to terrorism by watching TV about his own job.
Yeah.
His response instead was to stand on a golf course and say, "I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive." And you just know that Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld were just somewhere like cackling in the wings, being like, "We've absolutely nailed this."
Yeah.
We can't, that's kind of where we finished the episode. Is like Bartlett on the edge of making, I guess, like
it's very abrupt cut off.
Yeah, it feels like a real kind of, we finish on a real call to arms moment. But I would like to say that we have dropped the subject matter of the Cubans
entirely.
Like not a single mention of them. So I feel like that might have just been a pilot only storyline.
Yes. Are we ready for our rapid fires?
I'm ready. I mean,
ready.
There's some real big contenders this week.
Yeah.
So Leigh, best fashion for you?
It's very much Mandy and Daisy bringing the fashion this episode for me. I'm going to say it's between Daisy's chocolate wide leg slacks and Mandy's trench coat, which she gets so much mileage in this episode out of kind of furiously whipping it on and off. It's kind of like a white, oversized trench. And you have to have real grace and talent, I think, to pull off a white, oversized trench.
Yeah. No, I think it deserves the respect that you've given it. Obviously, for me, mine will remain with the president, a la last week in the sports jacket, in that I think for me the best fashion moment was, in fact, POTUS in the hoodie.
Yeah.
Just like, kind of like seeing politicians in like leisure wear is like seeing animals dressed up in clothes.
And also like seeing Bartlett in his casual wear, I think very much in the words of Kesha, "It's going down, I'm yelling timber." Like, you know that shit has gone down.
Okay, for you, what could a British or Irish politician just never get away with from this episode?
I'm going to say wearing a hoodie. Can you imagine Boris Johnson in a hoodie? Horrifying. Ed Miliband in a hoodie? Wrong. Keir Starmer. I mean, I think we've both seen him in a hoodie and it just felt, his hair was too perfect with the hoodie. It just was...
If Boris Johnson had ever worn a hoodie, like, the press would have found, like, made some video of him, like, trying to put it on and he would have got, like, trapped in it. For me, I think something that a British or Irish politician could never get away with is just, like, calling someone to inform them that they've become a widow.
I'm so sorry. It's just something's happened. Basically, your husband is dead. Like, it would be awful.
I think they've been through enough. Like, don't get Rishi Sunak to make that phone call.
Oh dear God.
Looking at our kind of bingo card of guns, abortion, free speech, and religion, I don't think that any of these came up as overtly as they did in last week's episode.
No, it feels like we were hitting them all hard in the pilot and now we've kind of calmed down.
Yeah, which I'm not mad about. But we did have some big ticket items on the kind of roster, which was sex work, terrorism, and then kind of the history of race in America.
Yeah. I think we definitely hit on slavery. Not, I think, with the depth that would potentially be more ideal, but we did hit on it.
Yeah, it does feel unfortunate that then that character was immediately killed off.
Yeah.
But this episode did see the entrance of two more characters of colour in Daisy and Morris, joining Bonnie in just the group of Huns. Although we didn't see Bonnie this episode, and I am worried about.
We saw her briefly when she was asking Sam if the speech was polished.
For sure, yeah, okay. No, we did see Bonnie recently, but just for one scene, and she deserves more screen time. Leigh, what is your offer for man? I feel like a man.
Just the phrase, she's a knockout, when referring to another man's wife.
Oh, yeah.
Literally, like Morris showing Leo a photo of the mother of his new baby and Leo's response being, she's a knockout. Like, I will never be able to say that phrase. And there's something so powerful about it. I immediately want a man to say it about me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, there's just something about the delivery from Sam of, about a week ago, I accidentally slept with a prostitute.
To his boss.
Yeah. That's just masculinity encapsulated.
Yeah. And then the response of, did you trip over?
Sensational. But I do think we should take a moment, like an honourable mention in this category should be, victory is mine, I drink from the keg of glory, bring me all of the best bagels and muffins in the land. What moment made you proudest to be an American?
There were two. They were both, unsurprisingly, from Aslan/President Bartlett, both of which we've already heard. First of which is, look at that picture again. The past isn't the only thing your family can be proud of. To Morris, who then obviously immediately dies. And Leo, I am not frightened. I'm going to blow them off the face of the earth with the fury of God's own thunder.
Yeah. That for me is it every day of the week. Like he has my vote.
Yeah, it really is like calling to mind the kind of puritanical history of America, of the people who like just loved God too much to stay in England and had to go and make their own country because they were just slightly too much for Britain.
And so, Leigh, what do you have to teach me this week?
We are going to talk about what even is the vice president's job. Here are some famous quotes about the job from some famous holders of the office. John Adams, who you will remember from Hamilton, said,
yes,
when he was vice president, in a letter to his wife, "My country has, in its wisdom, contrived for me the most insignificant office that ever the invention of man or his imagination contrived."
He was not a happy bunny, was he?
He was so upset. Thomas R. Marshall, who was VP to Woodrow Wilson, said, "Once there were two brothers. One ran away to sea. The other was elected vice president of the United States, and nothing was heard of either ever again." Calvin Coolidge, when he was vice president, was so unknown to the American population that when he got sent Major League Baseball tickets, they misspelled his name. And a fire marshal failed to recognize him when his Washington residence was evacuated.
Oh.
Which is sad.
That is actually really sad.
It's really sad. And then John Nance Garner, who was VP to Franklin D. Roosevelt, said that the vice presidency isn't worth a pitcher of warm piss. So we have some upset men, which kind of contextualizes Hoynes a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And basically, Dan Quayle, who was VP to George Bush Sr., who was president before Bill Clinton, basically said that it's the president who decides how powerful the vice president is, because the president will kind of delegate to him. Obviously, as we said previously, the vice president didn't get his own office until 1939. And in the first 100 years of the United States as a country, 7 proposals were put forward to abolish the office of vice president because it was seen as being so irrelevant. Now, obviously, the vice president does have some formal duties, one of which is to be the president of the Senate. So they basically are like a tiebreaker for the Senate. So Kamala Harris currently, when there was a 50-50 split in the Senate, exactly when the senators inevitably voted down party lines, she could cast the tie-breaking vote for the Democrats, basically. Nice. And the other thing that famously the vice president has as a power is that they are the first in the line of succession. So if anything happens to the president, the vice president becomes the president until the next election.
As we see in many kind of end of the world disaster films.
Exactly. And the absolute classic Designated Survivor. What a show, what a time. And so that is something that people are particularly concerned about at the moment, because obviously the 2 frontrunners for the 2024 election are both going to be in their 80s. There is I think a 1 in 3 chance that whichever one of them is elected will die in office. So their choice of VP is therefore very important, obviously, because there's a decent chance, just statistically speaking, that person will become president by the end of the 4 years.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
You'd think that back in the day, there would be a higher likelihood of people having to take over from someone because, people died earlier and more regularly.
Yeah,
but now it's kind of crazy that it's a job that majority of people don't know a huge amount about. And also because the president has so much control over how much that person does. Who's VP? They could just not be very good at being president.
Yeah, and that is something that people are concerned about, because I think a large portion of the American population doesn't think Kamala Harris would be up to the job. So there was actually a Times article in January calling on President Biden to switch his VP candidate for this time around, but he hasn't. He's keeping Kamala Harris.
I think he would probably be under more scrutiny if he had swapped her out. And I think she'd be well up for the job.
I agree. But Franklin D. Roosevelt did die in office. And so his last VP, Harry Truman, was only VP for 82 days. And then Franklin D. Roosevelt died. And then Harry Truman became president of the United States. He, at the time that he became president, had never been informed about any war or post-war plans, including the Manhattan Project. And he died before Franklin D. Roosevelt died before VE Day. So we're still in World War II at this point. He'd met with the president only a few times while he'd been vice president. And the state of Roosevelt's health had also been kept secret from Harry Truman. So he had no idea that the president's death was imminent. And Truman was so horrified and traumatized by this experience that he basically changed the vice presidency to give it more powers when he was president, so that the vice president became part of the National Security Council, which does make sense, and also makes them part of cabinet meetings and security briefings.
So just makes them an informed person.
Yeah, in case they do have to take over. Richard Nixon was actually vice president to President Eisenhower before he was president himself, and he then kind of expanded the role further again. So Eisenhower actually authorized him to like preside over cabinet meetings when he wasn't there, and he also, on several occasions, Richard Nixon actually assumed the control of the executive branch when Eisenhower had a heart attack and a stroke while he was president.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm learning from this is like, thank you, Harry Truman.
Yeah.
Like, cheers,
and
mate.
then things take a turn for the worse. In that Spiro, so Spiro Agnew was vice president to Richard Nixon pre-Watergate. Luckily for Spiro Agnew, this is kind of forgotten by history because Watergate happened right afterwards, and it kind of like eclipsed everything that he did. But he basically he is the only like high-ranking official who was charged with any crimes while he was in office. So he's the only kind of surrogate for what Trump is currently going through. He was accused of taking bribes to give government contracts to various companies. And he basically, there was some kind of behind the scenes work done that basically he pled for no jail time in return for never holding elected office again.
I mean, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, he basically pled no contest to like one of the felonies, one kind of lesser charge that he was charged with, like tax evasion. And but one of the stipulations they got out of him was that he would never hold office again.
I mean, wouldn't that be an amazing outcome for Donald Trump?
I would take no jail time in comparison to never holding elected office again.
Yeah.
I would take that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a sensational deal.
Yeah. Then we come to kind of 1999 when The West Wing came out. Al Gore was vice president when this came out, and him and Clinton were basically like bros. Like they were just two bros. Like they were both like, I think they were the youngest president vice president team ever at that time, and so yeah, they were just kind of bros together until Al Gore broke with Clinton to kind of form his own presidential hopes. And then we come to Dick Cheney, who in many ways gave us the gift of Trump. Famously, Dick Cheney actually shot someone while he was vice president. Do we recall this?
Oh my, yes.
Yes, he shot Harry Whittington, a Texas attorney, while they were on a quail hunt. He was aiming for a bird, apparently, but mistakenly hit Whittington in the face, neck, and body.
Oh.
Yeah, bad, really bad. The West Wing at the time and Whittington himself blamed Whittington for the fact that he was shot. They were basically like, he walked in the way. And then Whittington actually apologized to Cheney and to his own family for being shot.
I mean, that's just got Dick Cheney written all over it, hasn't it?
What I did love, though, was that early reports were that Cheney and Whittington were close friends, and Whittington clarified that they were just, in fact, acquaintances.
It's a beautiful put down when someone's like, oh, because they're your friend, and you're like, oh no, I don't know them well.
Yeah, he's just the man that shot me.
It's very subtle shade, but shade nonetheless.
Yeah, and basically, like, Cheney transformed the vice presidency into something that it had never been before, because I think George W. Bush was quite scared about becoming president, and so he just like trusted Cheney with everything. And Cheney, although obviously George W. Bush was the commander-in-chief, Dick Cheney actually like withheld information from him, and as we learned in the film Vice, famously, and he withheld information from him so that it kind of gave him false choices of what his only options were. So obviously Dick Cheney was responsible for American citizens being basically under like warrantless domestic surveillance. He was responsible for setting up Guantanamo and the use of torture techniques. He was a huge part of persuading George Bush to go to war in Iraq. And he kind of transformed national security law. He didn't really wait for the courts to decide the 2000 election before setting up a transition on George W. Bush's behalf. Cheney left office with a 13% approval rating, which is roughly half the support Richard Nixon had at the height of Watergate.
Oh my God. He's a bit of an arsehole, isn't he?
Yeah,
Putting
I
it
mean, he
politely.
in many ways set things in place so that a lot of what Trump did then became possible.
I'm really interested to see how the kind of storyline with Hoynes plays out in the West Wing as the series go on, because if we're during the Clinton administration at the time of airing, it's like, okay, so that was quite a new kind of relationship between Al Gore and Bill Clinton. So I wonder if there'll be kind of not references, but there might be like a mirroring of how the VP role is like changing as the show goes forward.
I think we are actually historically at the time where Al Gore was already breaking from Clinton.
So maybe that's why we're seeing this kind of like Hoynes being like, I'm not openly disagreeing with you, but what I am doing is just like very subtly not giving you 100% of my support.
The famous line of, I did not have sexual relations with that woman, was in 1998. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. That's very useful context.
Yes. So then post Cheney, we had the famous kind of bromance of Biden and Obama in the presidency, vice presidency. Because basically Obama was just like really good at delegating stuff to Biden. Like he just gave him whole areas to kind of focus on. So they had like a really effective president-VP relationship. Mike Pence said, I frankly hold Dick Cheney in really high regard in his role as vice president and as an American, and said that he wanted to he wanted to model himself on Dick Cheney on ascending to the vice presidency. He kind of failed in that I think he thought that Trump was a lot stupider than he actually was. And I think he thought that he was going to be pulling a lot more strings behind the scenes, a la Cheney. But unfortunately, Trump proved more effective than he had thought.
So one of the greatest political choices you can do is make people think you're stupid. I mean, we saw it with our own prime minister, previous prime minister. If people are laughing at you, then they're thinking less about what legislation you're putting in place.
Correct. But this is where the other job that the VP actually has in the Constitution comes into play, in that they preside over the processing of the electoral ballots. So when in the Senate is basically like certifying this is who won the election, the vice president presides over that. And so Trump then tried to claim that the vice president Pence had the power to not accept those election results.
Yes, the famous stolen election.
Yes. So historically, that's always been just like a ceremonial role that the vice president presides over. But Trump tried to say that he had the power to actually reject the electors. Hence why we then ended up with hang Mike Pence.
It's just wild, isn't it? And then the thing that was kind of annoying is then Mike Pence got to be the good guy.
Yeah, but I mean, the good news out of all of this, the happy ending, if you will, is that Mike Pence's political future is destroyed because Republicans actually hate Mike Pence now. He tried to run for the Republican candidacy this time round. And not only do Democrats not like him now, the Republicans also don't like him. So his candidacy for president went absolutely nowhere.
It's something to hold on to.
It is kind of difficult to convince people in a crowded Republican primary that you are the most electable candidate when hordes of your voters have been crying out for your death.
Yeah, I don't know if you can come back from that. So now we've sort of broken down the role of the vice president. I feel like we're in a good position to talk about predictions for next episode.
I think like Hoynes, is just going to be on a low boil that's just kind of going to splash up occasionally and add some drama into the mix.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for Mandy to enter the West Wing. I worry that will lead to the demise of Daisy, or is Daisy going to be joining her in the West Wing? Like, have they both been hired?
Yeah, I feel like I'm just going to keep that in the forefront of my mind going into next week's episode. I'm expecting the next episode to hold a lot of like pettiness between Mandy and Josh, a lot of bickering.
A lot of hot ex energy.
Yeah, and I imagine there'll be a scene where like Leo sits them down and is like, right, okay, kids, stop it. Like, you've got to get along or I'm going to turn this car around.
Yeah, I also think there's going to be some kind of fallout for the Laurie-Sam storyline.
Yeah.
Which may lead to the return of the Christians.
Yes. I think the Laurie and Sam secret romance is going to be something that like continues on for like a few episodes, if not the whole season. So I wonder if we're going to get to see them being like very loved up for a while before it inevitably explodes in his own face.
Yeah. Also, like, how is Donna going to feel about Mandy being in the office?
It's just going to be pure drama, isn't it?
Also, something that I neglected to mention, but I do think is important to note, when CJ was giving her press conference in this week's episode, the professional respect in just the looks from Toby Ziegler watching her just seamlessly pivot away from the kind of glitchier moments with the press was so hot. Like, I just want any man to look at me with that level of professional respect.
It is all we really strive for as women, just the respect of men. Wow, what an absolutely devastating comment from me there. Misogyny in action. Good God. The other thing I'm expecting to see in the following episode is like the president being haunted by the loss of Morris.
Yeah, I hope that it's not just something that we kind of forget immediately.
Yeah.
I hope that we kind of also, like, I need to understand, like, has Bartlett ordered like an airstrike? Like, what's going, like when you say that you're unleashing the wrath of God's own thunder, like what in practical terms does that mean?
Also, does that mean, Leigh, that we are going to meet the person who's in charge of all of the military?
I imagine it means that we will meet the Joint Chiefs, I would have thought.
That's the jobs that I don't know about. So that might be, I'm going to keep my eye out for that.
Yes.
And try and learn a little bit more about the Joint Chiefs.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the world is slowly descending into chaos. And so it will be interesting to know who the Joint Chiefs are now and who they could possibly be.
There was a little joke about a military coup from Bartlett in this episode. And I was like, oh, it feels a bit real.
It's a little too on the nose. Okay, well, I suppose we've reached that point of the episode where I say, if you do, in fact, dear listeners, have any stupid questions of your own, I mean, I feel like I'm proving that there is no such thing as a stupid question. So if you have one, please do send it in to us. We're very excited to hear what you think too. Obviously, please could it be about American politics and not, you know, about what connections Leigh might or might not form on the L-word map. You can send them in to us via email, or you can message us on Instagram, and the details of how to do that are in our show description. And Leigh will probably provide incredibly impressive answers.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the answer to our stupid question this week of like, what does the vice president actually do? We've proved that it's not a stupid question because no one really seems to know.
It's actually an incredibly important question that probably needs to be answered by the US government at some point.
More formally, certainly. More formally, yeah.
Well, Leigh, this has been delightful.
It's been a joy and a privilege.
Should we do it again?
I can't wait for episode 3.
Right. Well, in that case, I guess there's nothing else to say. But until next time, stay calm.
And when necessary, don't be afraid to unleash the wrath of God's own thunder.